These are real hotels you can book right now, but guests keep reporting footsteps in empty halls, ghostly children by the pool, and figures sitting on the edge of the bed. So, would you still check in? Welcome back to Supernatural Signals. Tonight we're checking into some of the most famously haunted hotels in the world. Real places where you can book a room and maybe end up sharing it with someone you can't see. We'll walk through the history, the hauntings, and the stories guests and staff swear they've experienced, from ghostly housekeepers to famous children by an empty pool. And as always, I'm not here to tell you what to believe. I'm just here to lay out the stories, and you can decide if these hotels are truly haunted, or just really good at selling a spooky reputation. Alright, so let's get into it. Our first stop is the Stanley Hotel in Estes Park, Colorado. Built in the early 1900s as a luxury getaway in the mountains, the Stanley looks like a kind of place you'd go for a peaceful little vacation. Big white building, gorgeous views, and that old world hotel charm. But it's probably most famous now as the inspiration for Stephen King's The Shining. And once you hear the stories attached to this place, that connection makes a lot of sense. Guests and staff at the Stanley Hotel have reported activity all over the building. One of the most famous hotspots is room 217. People have claimed to see a woman believed to be a former housekeeper who supposedly still checks upon guests. Some say she unpacks their luggage, folds clothes, or straightens up the room, even when no one else has been inside. In other rooms and hallways, guests report hearing footsteps when no one's there, children running and laughing on empty floors, and doors that open and close on their own. The grand staircase and lobby are also known for strange photos. People have captured what looks like figures on the stairs or in doorways, shapes that don't match any of the actual guests who were present at the time. There are also reports of music coming from the ballroom late at night, as if a party is still going on long after the lights are out. Some guests say they hear piano notes, clinking glasses, or the soft murmur of voices, only to find the room completely empty when they go check. So, if the Stanley is haunted, it almost feels like a mix of residual energy and intelligent activity. Like some moments are replaying on a loop, and others might be a little bit more aware. Of course, some people think the hotel's reputation and the connection to The Shining make it easy to exaggerate every bump in the night. Old buildings creak, pipes knock, and of course our brains fill in the gaps. But when you have this many guests, staff members, and even photo evidence all pointing for something strange, it does make you wonder what's really sharing these hallways. So, would you spend the night at Stanley Hotel? And if so, would you dare to book room 217? Or is that an instant absolutely not from you? Alright, let's head into our next stop. Next, we're heading over to Eureka Springs, Arkansas, to visit the Crescent Hotel. Built in the late 1800s as a luxury resort, it went through a lot of different lives. Hotel, college, and eventually something much darker. Today, it's advertised as one of the most haunted hotels in America. And once you hear its story, that claim doesn't feel like an exaggeration. The Crescent's hauntings are tied to a really unsettling chapter. In the 1930s, a man named Norman Baker turned the building into a so-called hospital, claiming he could cure cancer. Spoiler alert, he couldn't. Many people died there under horrible conditions, and some guests and investigators think the trauma left a mark. One of the best-known spirits is a man often called Michael, believed to be a stonemason who supposedly fell to his death while working on the hotel. Guests in certain rooms have reported objects moving, lights flickering, and feeling someone sitting on the edge of the bed when no one's there. Others report seeing full apparitions of nurses from the hospital era, sometimes pushing gurneys or wheeling equipment down the halls. There are also stories of strange smells, cold spots, and disembodied voices in areas connected to the old morgue. Some visitors have claimed to capture figures in photographs, shapes that look like patients in outdated gowns, or faces peeking around the corners that don't match anyone on the tour. With the Crescent, the haunted reputation feels heavily tied to real life suffering. If any place is going to trap residual energy, it does make sense it would be a fake hospital where people were desperate and mistreated. On the other hand, the hotel leans into a ghostly branding now: ghost tours, haunted rooms, so there's always a chance for suggestion and dramatization. When you are told a hallway is haunted and then you hear a creak, your brain fills in ghost way faster than old pipes. But personally, the mix of verified history and so many overlapping reports gives this place a very heavy, very haunted energy, at least in theory. So, would you be curious enough to take a ghost tour at the Crescent Hotel? Or does the whole fake cancer hospital history make it an automatic new for you? Our next stop isn't technically a hotel in the normal sense. It's an ocean linear turned floating hotel, the Queen Mary in Long Beach, California. Originally launched in the 1930s as a luxury cruise ship, the Queen Mary later served as a troop ship during World War II. After it was retired, it was permanently docked and turned into a hotel and tourist attraction. Between its time at sea, wartime service, and onboard accidents, the ship has seen a lot of life and a lot of death. So it's not surprising that many people consider it one of the most haunted places in the world. There are paranormal reports from almost every level of the Queen Mary. One of the most famous stories is tied to the ship's engine room, particularly around a watertight door with a very dark history. People have reported seeing a man in work overalls, believed to be a crew member, who died there in an accident. Some guests say they see him darting around the machinery or feel a presence right by the door. Class swimming pool is another hot spot. Even though the pool is no longer in use, visitors have reported wet footprints appearing on the tiles, and the sound of splashing, and the giggles of unseen children. They even claim to see a woman in a vintage bathing suit disappearing when they look twice. There are also countless reports of footsteps in empty corridors, whispering voices, and cabin doors that open and close on their own. Some guests have even woken up feeling the bed sink slightly, as if someone just sat down beside them, only to find no one there. And because the Queen Mary was used to transport troops during the war, people also associate some of the activity with soldiers who never made it home. If any place has the right ingredients for a haunting, a long history, tragic accidents, wartime trauma, it's a ship like the Queen Mary. All that emotion, all the fear, all those people passing through the same narrow spaces. But at the same time, it's a very popular paranormal destination. When you take ghost tours in the dark, your senses are already dialed up to 11. Every drip, groan, and echo feels loaded. So it's really hard to separate what's truly unexplained from what's just the environment doing its thing. Still, some of the more detailed and consistent stories, like the little girl near the pool or the crew member in the engine room, have that eerie, specific quality that's hard to ignore. Now, if you stayed over at the Queen Mary, would you rather sleep in a regular cabin or purposely book one of those haunted rooms to see what happens? Now, as you probably noticed, there's a theme running through all these stories. These hotels and ships all have one thing in common. They force us to question what's real. Are guests genuinely experiencing paranormal activity, or are they falling for clever haunted advertising and a kind of spooky placebo effect? I honestly think it's probably a mixture of both. When you stay somewhere that's branded as haunted, your brain already is on high alert. So every creak, every pipe, every tiny sound in the walls suddenly feels loaded with meaning. It's easy to interpret the room settling, an old building shifting, or a random noise in the hallway as a ghost trying to get your attention. But at the same time, some of these stories are so specific and consistent and reported over and over again by people who don't know each other that it does make me wonder if there's something more going on than just suggestion. I have my own theories about how to tell the difference between genuine spirit activity and things that are just our brains are filling in the gaps for. But I'm going to save that for another video. What I will say here is that the only thing you should always, always, always rely on is your hidden sixth sense. Because I do think there are layers to hauntings. Some feel lighter, almost like beginner hauntings, kind of kin friendly in a weird way, just to see how you'll react. And it's when you choose to lean into that reality a little bit more, when you choose to believe the haunting over the human explanation, that's when the worlds start letting you in more and more. It's almost like you and whatever's on the other side are testing each other. Which, yeah, can feel magical, but be warned. It's best to know what you're doing before you dive headfirst and crack your skull. Safety first. So, if you ever get that sixth sense feeling that this is more than just a creaky closet, and you know you're not ready to find out what else it could be, just tell yourself, it's a freaking closet. Alrighty. So, those are just a few of the haunted hotels you can stay in if you're brave enough. If you enjoy this video and want more deep dives into the paranormal, don't forget to like, subscribe, and hit that notification bell so you don't miss the next case. I also launched a new short series called Mini Mysteries, where I share quick, self-contained spooky stories that don't need full deep dives. If you want bite-sized paranormal content, you can find those over in my Shorts tab. As always, thanks for watching, and stay curious and stay tuned into the supernatural. Thanks for watching.